I'm Shane Baird. I'm veterinarian and owner of Mobile Veterinary Services up in Golden. We're an all-ambulatory veterinary practice, equine primarily. We have been known to work on a cow here and there. We cover all of Jefferson County, get up into Gilpin, South Boulder, and then up into Clear Creek, and even down on this end a little bit around Chatfield, break over into, I think it's Arapahoe County down in here. And I'm here to talk to you about trail first aid as a veterinarian. A little bit of my personal background. I grew up, did a little bit of rodeo, did a little bit of everything on horses. I spent the vast majority of my time on a horse in the backcountry. My dad raised me packing, so I kind of feel at home in a group like this. Since becoming a veterinarian, I've added a new skill set to my packing capabilities, and truly enjoy the backcountries of Colorado. And I, born and raised in Idaho, I left that part out. And up there's a lot of room to roam without crossing people. I still go back at least every other year to go run around in the wilderness with my dad and my brother and chase elk around. More chasing than doing anything else, but we ride horses, and in a 7 or 8 day pack we'll cover about 150 to 200 miles. So we ride hard.
7 days?
Yeah.
150 to 200 miles.
Yeah. So we cover a lot of country. So again, with my now background as a veterinarian, I've kind of changed the way I approach things, look at things, but in the end it all goes back to the old ways. They've worked for a long time. I get to use medicine now rather than just twitch a horse and make him grin and bear it. I can use medicine now, but again, the reality stands true. This is not me. That's my younger brother in Idaho. And I'd like to thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to come down and speak with you. So I kind of broke this down, random thoughts by Shane, really. What to pack on the trail. And that depends entirely on where you're going to be. Obviously, what you have in the mountains, you don't need in the desert, etc. And then how long are you going to be out? How long do you have to triage that horse for? Do you need a couple hours? Do you need a day? Those kinds of things may determine the volume which you pack, and also the level of expertise that you need to have with you. And how long before you can get help, same kind of idea. And are there any unique emergencies to the environment? We'll get into that a little bit later. I usually think of, and in my experience, thousands of miles on the trail, the three biggest things that I've ever dealt with: lacerations of all sorts, colics, and eye issues. Pokes, prods, scratches, foreign bodies in the eye, those kinds of things. As far as lacerations, I'll kind of a little more in depth. Scrapes and scratches, lacerations, true actual cuts into the flesh. Anything on the leg isn't a joint until proven otherwise, which for the horse's livelihood is one of those things we've got to watch out for. That becomes a significant issue, and how do we approach it while we're in the backcountry? Again, deep wounds into muscles and deeper structures, if we have, and then the piercing staub, riding through the dark, and either you or your horse took a puncture. And I can honestly say, in my experience, I've been through all of these on the trail. And when you're dealing with any form of laceration, the first thing is bleeding. If you need to control bleeding, the horse was designed such that the major bleeding parts are on the back of the limbs. They're protected. On the front of the limb, it doesn't bleed quite as bad. So the arteries is all set to the back side of the limbs, front and back legs. So again, that's a protection thing. Most likely you're going to end up with a pretty nasty venous bleed, but you won't end up with that spurting arterial bleed. But if you do, good old-fashioned compress, pressure, Elasticon, is everybody's best friend.
Vet wrap, this name?
And vet wrap.
What's Elasticon?
Elasticon is essentially a sticky ace bandage. It has an adhesive side, and this is my little pack. This is all I carry, plus or minus a few other small things, and I can kind of show you those details here in a bit. So controlling bleeding and then starting to assess the situation. If you're out on the trail and you're going to be in camp within X amount of time, what do I need to do at this point? Control the bleeding. If any muscles have been damaged, is it going to hurt the horse to carry extra weight? Do I need to protect the wound from getting dirtier? Do I need to put a bandage on the trail, or can this one go down the trail uncovered, get back to camp and clean it at that time? Whether camp is a base camp, a truck, whatever, all the same principles apply. Once you've kind of assessed that, if you can ride it and it doesn't need any pressure, hop on, get to help. If you need pressure and need less weight, and you've got potential compromise of joints, you've got potential compromise of tendons, and the function of the limb or whatever structure is harmed doesn't seem to be working right, just walk them out. And I can honestly say I've done it more than once. And I don't know if this shows up very well, but this is a client's horse. This is not a reindeer cross. This is a horse that was running around in the woods and pulled it out, didn't even hardly bleed a drop, but when it chewed, the stick was kind of going like this. It was right up by the TMJ, the temporomandibular joint, where the jaw and the skull meet. It was very graphic, but it turned out just fine. So even the worst looking things can end up just fine. I was going to put a couple more gruesome photos in of things that I've dealt with, but I decided to stay a little lighter. Do you have a question?
If our horse did that, we should leave it in if we can.
If possible, bandage it, get it out, and just.
Oh, do take it out.
You can actually wrap around the stick just like you would a person. Use some bandaging around the stick, and horses actually do pretty well if you blind one eye. In a case like this, put some padding around that thing so it'll stabilize it. But depending on where you're needing to get to, I don't know that I'd throw that one in a trailer, banging his head around. But I'd get to where I knew I had plenty of good fresh running water. Because my guess was when I looked at this, I thought, nah, this one's going to bleed pretty good, and literally not a drop of blood out of the wound. So I got everything ready. I got my buckets. I got everything ready to go, and I pulled that thing out. I was like, oh, that was anticlimactic. Nothing happened. We just looked at it. I flushed it out a few times, and I was done. So case like this, I would say get to a place where you can manage it. Just hop on, take them out, get them somewhere where either back to the truck, back to camp, where you've got good water, and then go ahead and sort it out at that point. But I've seen stabs in the head, obviously. I've seen them piercing through the forearm. I've seen them piercing through the ribs. Horses running around through the woods do silly things, and at night, it happens. So to actually get to the supplies for lacerations, gauze patches and then a roll of gauze, I think, is a very important part. Cotton padding, and you can see this is nice and clean. It's been in the pack for a while, but this is actually cast padding, what they would wrap your arm in before they laid a cast across it. I find it to be the best material to wrap a horse's leg in. Vet wrap, and Elasticon, and good old-fashioned duct tape. If you need to really patch something up, duct tape does help. Horses' feet, duct tape's a great thing.
So what's the difference between vet wrap and Elasticon?
The vet wrap has a constricting nature. It will constrict on itself. It will, if you stretch it out and apply it, it will try and pull back to its normal state. The Elasticon will not constrict. And that adhesive nature of the Elasticon seals a bandage up a little bit. So I'll, like on the trail, I'll put something right over the wound, and then I'll put the padding on, a little bit of vet wrap to cinch it up, the Elasticon over the whole thing, and then duct tape the whole thing to waterproof it if I've got a bunch of area to get through. And then for wound cleansing on the trail, it doesn't take a whole lot of Betadine. Just a little bit, and I've got little, like I said, my little kit here. Wrong one. We'll go over this once a little more in depth. I can show you guys if you want to see it. I'll go over it later, sorry. So just a little bit of Betadine, and then a small syringe to flush wounds with, and a container like this, a little Tupperware works just fine, to actually mix your Betadine in, and then use that to flush with. And that's kind of the basics of lacerations, because presuming that you've got a saddled horse or a pack horse, you're probably not going to deal with any big body lacerations. You could deal with a chest laceration, neck, head, eye stuff. Not a lot of bandaging to do there. That's just a matter of cleaning them up a little bit and sending them down the trail. The obvious and the biggest issue that we run into with riding in the backcountry and the terrain that we ride is legs. First and foremost, that's the biggest issue that in my life that I've ever run across. The second biggest thing is colic.
Well, just going back just a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, so there you are, and you've got something on the leg. Obviously, the vet wrap by itself isn't going to last very well. But of course, you don't ever want to wrap it up so tight that the leg doesn't get any circulation.
Right.
So you're talking about, doesn't the Elasticon itself provide enough constriction to
It will. Simple, quick bandage, slap on your dressing, your sterile gauze,
right.
and then wrap that Elasticon on. It is a very functional trail bandage. Very functional.
So where does the vet wrap come in?
I would use the vet wrap if I were going to build a little bulkier, if I had something that I was trying to compress a little bit more, and I want it, I can put my hand on it,
right.
But if I put a t-shirt on it and then put my hand on it,
Yeah.
I get a little bit more and better compression rather than so focal. So the vet wrap my rule when I'm using vet wrap is it never touches hair. So I'll pre-wrap with this, then wrap my Elasticon, or wrap my vet wrap, and then over the top of that, pull it all together with a little bit of Elasticon. Does that make sense? Did that get to your point, Dan?
Yeah, so the duct tape is just if you're trying to waterproof.
Yeah, if you've got something low and you've got a bunch of stream crossings to go across, to try and make it last a little bit better. It's another layer to give you a little bit more protection. And then foot issues if you need a little bit more support. The other thing that's not on this list, I think it shows up in a later list, is an easy boot. It's an easy, quick fix if you jerk a shoe or you actually run something into the bottom of the foot and you need some protection for that foot. To pad that, put a padding in there, duct tape it, and then I usually carry an easy boot that's a size too big for my horse as well as the size for my horse. And so over a duct tape wrap, I can still slip an easy boot, strap that on, and get them out. In that case, I'm going to probably be walking it, but
Yeah.
I can at least get them out without three-legging them. Does that get to your point, Dan?
Yeah.
Okay. So next step, or next most common that I probably deal with is colic. Recognizing signs early, and that comes down to knowing your animals. Know what their normal behaviors are, whether that's at home or on the trail or in the paddock. If you're highlining them, do they get in and they won't go straight to grazing. They want to check it out, make sure, know where their buddies are, know what's going on, what that particular animal's behaviors are. If it's not acting normally, it's colicky until proven otherwise, and that's the safest thing I can say. In that case, tie them up higher, don't let them eat. Make sure they've got water. No horses ever starve to death in 24 hours. Keep them off, or at least reduced feed intake for 12 to 24 hours, and then start working them back up onto feed, get them on water well, because at that point you've probably got some hydration compromise. If you were riding in the summer, it was a real hot day, didn't have good water, horse wouldn't drink, et cetera, et cetera. And that gets me to the other side, the prevention side of things, electrolytes. I find them very useful, especially in a case where horses are at free choice on water or regular opportunities to drink. If you're going to ride long, hot days without having a lot of water stops, a lot of the country that I used to ride in Idaho, we'd be dry all day. We'd leave camp, we'd never see water, we'd get back to camp. They'd get to water then. Those horses I would never use electrolytes in during the day because there's actually been a couple of studies that show that in water deprivation, electrolytes do us more harm than good. It can increase the chance of colic, but if you've got good water all day, or you know you're going to have good water, electrolytes can help there. And the idea behind the electrolytes is to drive thirst, to get them to drink better and drink more. So I covered the feed restrictions. If you're changing feeds, if you're going out and all of a sudden we're going to switch from this horse has been on grass hay and we're on alfalfa pellets or alfalfa cubes on this trip, first choice is grass, is grazing them. Second choice is going to be mixing the two. Third choice will be slowly getting them on it. Again, 12 to 24 hours, it does make a difference to not let them just gorge and fill themselves on alfalfa cubes if they've been on grass hay at home. So again, that depends on your situation. And then as far as treatment on the trail, bute and banamine, if you have, and or banamine, if you have them with you, that's a very important tool. And other drugs in general, Buscopan is another colic drug that we use a lot, and sedation, depending on the severity of the colic. And that gets back to your relationship with your veterinarian and what you and he or she feels you're comfortable with doing out there in the field. We've got new routes of administration for sedation, so there are some orals now that are very effective. And then treatment on the trail, electrolytes. If you can get to water, get them on water, you can paste them with electrolytes and let them just rest for a while and get them to start taking on water, and that can make a big difference for a colicky horse, is just to get them back to drinking water. Current situation, I've been dealing with a bunch of colics in the last 6 or 7 days. Horses weren't drinking well through the rain, and then all of a sudden we got hot and they're dehydrated and we're colicking. I saw 3 today.
Talk about the electrolytes more. What kind of electrolytes? How much of that? How do you give it to them?
Electrolytes come in, you can get a paste form. They do have paste tubes, just like a tube of Wormer. There's powders, will work as well. For an average 1,000-pound horse, a tablespoonish is a dose once a day for that horse. And just mix that in. So the salt, that I mix in with grain or mix in with feed of some form. The electrolytes you can mix in with feed. If you need to get it in them and get them in on the trail when you don't have anything, a little syringe. Again, I've mixed up powdered electrolytes into a paste because just from a weight efficiency standpoint in space, a collapsed syringe takes up a lot less space, and a little bit of powder doesn't take up much. So to go ahead and take a little bit of powder, add some water, and just syringe it in their mouth, again, just like you were going to administer bute or dewormer. And as far as preparatory, I didn't go over that. My personal routine with my horse when I'm getting ready to go out, I will start giving him some electrolyte supplementation about 72 hours before I'm going to leave, and I will stop 24 hours before I leave so that, again, he can stay on free choice, because once I throw him in the trailer, if it's 4 hours or 8 hours or 10 hours to where I'm going to get to, he's going to be water deprived for that state, for that time frame. And so I hold them off stop the electrolytes 24 hours before I'm going to leave so that they can tank up that 24 hours leading up to leaving, and then we're on the trailer and going, and once we get there, he can drink all he wants. And then if I'm going to be in a situation where I can get lots of water, I'll put him right back on his electrolytes. And again, that can be something as simple as a tablespoon of table salt. That will drive their thirst. Just like as you go have a nice salty whatever, first thing you want to do is go find something to drink.
So you're just trying to get them to drink?
Correct.
You're not trying to balance stuff?
Horses waste electrolytes very efficiently. Their kidneys are very efficient at dumping what they don't need. And so essentially the only thing that I'm after with electrolytes is to drive their thirst. And by driving thirst, with colics, in a barn situation, in a home situation, through the years, I've kind of decided that through talking with clients that horses quit drinking probably somewhere in the realm of 12 to 18 hours before we see them stop eating. The stop eating part is usually what the red flag that most of us have. But if you know your horses and know if you've got a situation as far as how they drink their water, obviously automatic waters are automatically thrown out, or group situations where numerous horses drink out of a single tank, you can't. But if you stall horses in barns that are on buckets, we know that I've had clients call, he's getting ready to colic, he's quit drinking today. He's not showing any outward signs. So we talk about it, we may go give him a little bit of Banamine, put him on some electrolytes, and away we go. And that horse never actually colics. Would he have? I don't know, but they know that horse, I trust their judgment. So that's the whole idea behind the electrolytes is water intake. The other one that some horses like, my horse will only drink red Gatorade. He will not drink orange Gatorade, but that works as well. Gatorade is another source of electrolytes. Get them to take on more water. You don't want to offer them solely Gatorade, but if they've got their normal water and then a little bit of Gatorade, that's fine too. And it works pretty well actually. And that is not a plug in any way for Gatorade. Powerade's fine too.
I was just going to say, this was years ago, we were way back in a horse Colic, and someone had Gatorade, and we got it down the horse got better.
Yep.
I never would have dreamed that.
I've seen some of the weirdest things that I probably should never speak again when it comes to being back there, but I've seen them work, so I can't poo-poo them at all. The third more common issue is eye issues. Usually night riding, something like that, or banging through the brush, or if you're working trail. I've seen it where you're working trail. Horses aren't necessarily tied, they're just loose in the trail behind you and you're knocking trees out, knocking limbs out, and something spooked them and they kind of did one of these and stuck their eye. A little bottle of eye wash, contact solution, the little travel size of contact solution is actually just about right for flushing the heck out of an eye. And then again, depending on your relationship with your veterinarian, some triple antibiotic ophthalmic ointment. It's basically Neosporin for the eye. It's a nice general protective cover. Just kind of cover your bases if you end up with. And I tried to find one of my pictures of the cloudy eye, and I couldn't. They were all grotesque. Apparently, I only take pictures of the really bad ones. So I just pulled a nice, healthy, normal-looking eye. Then we get into the atypical first aid issues on the trail. This is not a distortion. If you have never seen a snake bite horse, they are horrendous. They start to look something more like a rhinoceros than a horse. Horses, the way they behave, whether you're riding them or they're on the ground or they're free, 90% of them get bit in the nose. The rest of them get bit in the leg as they're going by. And again, this is one of those environmental things. You don't need to worry about this if you're riding in the Colorado high country. If you're riding on the front range, absolutely. If they get bit in the nose, it is a nice piece of reassurance to have a piece of garden hose with you. People often look at me like I'm crazy when I tell them they need a piece of hose. If that nose starts to swell enough that they start to have trouble with their airway, shove that hose in their nose. About 12 inches, 12 to 16 inches, 2 pieces. Put it in both nostrils and away you go. They can breathe. That will maintain an open airway until you can get to more help.
It's 5/8 inch.
Yeah. The other thing that works great, talk to your favorite veterinarian, and a syringe casing is actually perfect. A 35 cc syringe casing, same thing. It's more rigid. But everyone has garden hose laying around.
I've been carrying a piece that's only about that long. Is that too short?
It'll work.
Okay.
I mean, if you need it, you need it. But yeah, it's a very...
Two?
You don't necessarily need 2, but in an ideal world, yes, you have 2 with you. Other creature encounters. The rarely seen bearded horse, and this was a client horse. Pretty simple fix, but you got to convince him to let you touch that nose. Because even getting his bridle off is a nightmare. He doesn't want you to touch him. The old cut the end of the quill off and then pull, it does help. It doesn't make it perfectly easy, but it helps with relieving the pressure on the balloon or whatever they say the porcupine quill is.
You mean you cut them?
Yeah, you take and you'd cut the end of the quill
Yeah.
right here and then grab it and pull. So it's and I don't know. This one was my first porcupine that I've ever seen, porcupine horse encounter. And there's an air pillow essentially in that quill. So if you cut the end off, it deflates it supposedly. And I tried a few of them, cut them off and pulled them, and they were...
So how do you get them out? Tweezers?
Yep, just a pair of tweezers or forceps. So you just cut the end and
And they
pull right out.
You deflate
Yeah.
them?
I wouldn't say pull right out, but they pull
Most
out.
people are going to have a Leatherman. I guess that worked fine.
Absolutely. Leatherman's fine. I carry a small set of forceps, but I also use that to stitch with. So, but yeah, I have grabbed my Leatherman for a number of these procedures. I've used a Leatherman to sew with. I'm not afraid to tell you that. Other uncommon one is an entrapment, crossing rivers, swift water. I had one of those 2 years ago, crossing a moderate creek, and the horse just set his leg just wrong and put it between 2 rocks. We had that horse down in the water, laying down, back under, nose up, for about 40 minutes, letting him gain his strength. Finally, one last push, and he let us move the rock a little bit, and that allowed him enough to get out. So that's one of those things. If you need it, sedation can come in pretty handy there, which I did. I sedated him just to be able to settle him down enough, because there was no way we were getting him out without. Rocks on the trail, that usually leads to lacerations. See previous discussion. And then roll-offs. Getting rolled, whether it's your pack animal, your animal, getting rolled off and trapped under a tree, or cattywampus up a tree, ropes and sedation. Usually you've got enough rigging around that will use your ropes. I don't carry an extra rope for it. Lead ropes are around, reins are around. And then sedation again. If you're comfortable using it, can come in very handy in these situations to get you out of it, and get you out of it cleanly. You can often kind of help the horse and drag him around and get him up. You may end up with some more banging, some more bruising. If you can mildly sedate him, pull him around, it can sometimes help you out. This picture, it's probably about 8 o'clock in the morning. This is on top of looking down into the middle fork of the Salmon River up in Idaho. The farthest peaks here are the Sawtooth Range. Or horses can be horses. and they'll get themselves trapped in places that you could never imagine.
Horse I know.
Yes, that is a horse you know, Kim. Not her horse. And it's a horse I know very well.
Got to know her even better after this.
This is at the Evergreen Rodeo Grounds underneath the underneath the grandstands.
You're kidding.
Uh-huh.
Oh, my goodness.
Yep.
So why would a horse go under there just to explore?
The grass is greener on the other side. Always.
Because
And they can't get out.
Yeah. No, she actually, I sedated her and we actually finally got her to back out, but
But if you don't have sedation, how are you going to get that horse out? You have to get her to go down and back out?
no, you start cutting things or taking things apart. You can see she's stepped her front feet over this
Oh
axe.
my gosh.
Her front feet are on this side of this axe, and that is about that far from her belly.
Yeah.
I don't know how she got in there, but I sedated her mildly because there's no room for her to lift up because her withers are against the member,
Right, yeah.
the footer here. She just kind of with a little guidance managed to get that foot up and
Okay,
over
but
and back through.
sedation is, I mean, try to do it without a sedator. I mean,
Even then, I've seen them get out of situations, and it depends on the horse.
okay.
So when you talk about sedation, does like that beat calm that you can get, does
That
that do anything?
it depends on the horse, but some of them are absolutely. That's a horse-to-horse thing, but obviously in my repertoire, I get to use chemical sedation restraint, either intramuscular, intravenous, or even oral. We've got oral gels now that are very effective at sedating horses pretty quickly.
Is that all by prescription?
Mhm. Yeah, it's prescription.
Does that beat calm that you can just?
Yeah, that's over the counter.
Does that work?
Depends on the horse. I've seen it work wonderfully on some horses and just really takes the edge off. If you need something a little bit faster, the orals or the injectable chemicals are pretty good too. But the Be Calm for even a colic, if you can get that Be Calm in them through a paste, it works. I've seen clients do that. And just helps to settle them down, because you see some horses that are colicky that are just fretful and won't settle themselves down. And if they're susceptible to the Be Calm, and that seems to be a horse-to-horse variance. I can't find any consistent pattern that it works on this kind of horse or this kind of horse, or doesn't work on this kind of horse. So the actual short and skinny on the list. We went over the bandage stuff, the gauze sponges and the duct tape, the Betadine, and the Novel Sand, just another cleaning. Scalpels, again, the Leatherman. If you got a good sharp knife, for whatever reason, the Staub, you can get that out. The eye ointment we talked about, Leatherman, and then an Easy Boot. I think that, and then, are we taking notes here? Should I switch? Can I switch? And then the medicines and the miscellaneous. Banamine, oral or injectable, both are very valid uses. Bute, same thing. Bute, probably more of a oral form. The Rompin, the xylazine, that's chemical restraint. That's actual sedation. Dermosidan gel, that's the oral gel that we can use. It's a very effective form of sedation. And then the last drug is Buscopan, that's a colic drug. Again, that depends on your comfort level in administering drugs to horses, all of those kinds of things. Syringes and needles, if you're carrying obviously any of this stuff. The eye wash, the stethoscope and thermometer to assess the situation. Knowing what you're hearing and or seeing means to you. Again, I think that this is where you know your horse. Is that heart rate unusually elevated for what's going on? If you just finished climbing a hill and all of a sudden your horse is kind of buckling over, is he colicky or is he just tired? Those kinds of things. The thermometer, again, knowing what normal is on your horse, expecting some elevation when you're at work during the day and riding. The electrolytes that we talked about, and then the garden hose. that's the optional kind of one. Thank you guys. Appreciate your time. And we're available. I'm available. Answer all kinds of questions. Don't I, Kim? Linda. And myself, and I don't believe I made any mention of my business partner, Dr. Alex Turner. One of the two of us is available 24/7. So we're always around.